Okay. I can pass my computer over. Okay, I'd like to call the Pelham Board of Education meeting of November 4th, 2020 to order. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this brings us to item 2.4, which is the reiteration of executive session motions. Sue.
Yes. Sorry. I'm just opening the document as we speak. Sorry, do you happen to have it?
I don't think it's an attachment on here.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was. It's on 1.2.
Got it.
There you go.
Yep. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. The board met in executive session to discuss the record of a particular student and the employment history of a particular individual. Sure. You want me to do that again? Should I do it one more time?
Yeah.
Okay. The board met in executive session to discuss the record of a particular student and the employment history of a particular person.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That was painful. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. I feel like I sound so loud now that I'm so close. Hopefully not on camera. Okay, so I don't really have too many opening remarks, which is rare, but I just wanted to thank all the community members for applying to our board and district committees. We did have time since our last meeting to go through all the applications, and we had an amazing, overwhelming turnout. So even in these tough times where people's personal time is quite limited, it was nice to see that the community is still involved and interested in the work that we do. So committee meetings will be starting in the next week or so, and you should have heard at this point which committees you've been assigned to, so thank you. So this brings us to section 3, which is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of October 23rd, 2020?
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Vinny. Thanks, Jess. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 4 is administrative and committee reports. 4.1 is the superintendent's report.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you. We are very excited that we are in the 8th week of hybrid learning. And for the most part, we're very thankful that we've been able to keep schools open and our students coming in. It's really just continues to be a joy to see them each and every day. We also, this week, believe it or not, our winter sports team started practicing. We're not yet sure what the season will hold, the winter season. We're waiting to hear from Section 1. They'll be making a decision on November 16th, but our teams are starting to practice. So this will be our next step into a new venture of indoor sports. So very pleased, though, Mr. Hodge, our athletic director, is working with the coaches to make sure that they have solid safety and health protocols in place so that we can, again, continue with our school program in a healthy way and keep everyone coming back to school. We're excited to have our haunted trail at the high school this past Monday night. It was supposed to be last week, but due to weather, they moved it to Monday. I know Mr. Berkowitz and Ms. Antonelli are learning a lot about the high school and about our schools and the traditions that have been so strong in Pelham. And at the same time, having to find creative ways to adapt to having those traditions in a COVID environment. So I just appreciate their efforts to do that. I'm really excited to see the kids out there with them on Monday night. And all reports were that they had a fun time. I wanted to highlight a number of items related really to our COVID and school opening. We really are pleased that the safety procedures that we have in place, we really feel are working well. We have, I know we can't provide a lot of detail each time that we have cases, and as obviously we've had a few cases in these recent weeks, and one most recently, of course, causing us to have to shift Hutchinson School to full remote instruction. But the one thing I did want to convey is we really, in general, are not seeing student-to-student spread or student-to-staff spread for the most part. I want to thank Julia Chung publicly for the immense amount of time, energy, and work that she spends every day, many evenings, and pretty much every weekend lately, contact tracing. Because the reality is the Department of Health cannot keep up with the demand. And even if they were keeping up, they would just be calling us and asking us for all the contacts anyways. So Julia genuinely has been spending hours and days and weekends and evenings doing this work and doing it thoroughly, which I think, again, speaks to our ability to help keep our schools safe. And so I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate all the work that she does. We're all getting very used to talking to each other quite often on the weekends. None of these things can happen like on a Tuesday during a work day, but no, that's fine. But we do continue to be thankful for that. And I do think as well that it's important that we all remain vigilant and not get COVID fatigue as far as safety procedures and practices, both inside school and outside of school, because again, we're not seeing the spread coming from inside. Most of the cases that we are seeing are also emanating from contacts outside of school. So I just ask folks to continue to redouble their efforts, especially as we're moving indoors for the cold weather, to get back to some of those really good practices that we all had in place back in the late spring. As you're probably aware, the governor issued some new travel restrictions, and I think that was specifically because we're heading into the holiday seasons. So we are, of course, we do remember that we've asked everyone all of our families to sign a health commitment with expectations, primarily that folks will adhere to the governor's executive orders. So now that we've got an adjustment to that, of course, we'll be sending that information out. I think even tonight, there's an email going out with the new information. And just ask people to plan ahead. We will be enforcing that health agreement. I know there has been talk or questions, some discussions around the region about the concept of closing between Thanksgiving and the holiday break, or for 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, 2 weeks after the holidays. I don't know of a district yet who's doing that. I think for us, we're very fortunate we have the health agreement in place, and I know that was our purpose, was to proactively put that expectation and to trust as a community that folks will make the right decision. And if they do travel, then there is a vehicle for them to properly quarantine and then return to work, to school. So we just ask folks to be cognizant of that as they are planning for the holidays. And we do
it's
not.
probably understood, but when you say close, you mean go all virtual, right? Not to not attend.
Oh, correct.
I know
yes.
it's probably
Yes,
given,
you're right.
but I
Yeah,
just want
that's
to
been the
clarify.
discussion. I know it's a subtle difference, but it's an important difference. Yeah, and at this time, we're not planning that to shift to full virtual. And like I said, as I said, I don't believe any other districts yet have made that decision either, to shift to full virtual for the post-holidays. Want to continue to thank John Sabalos and Alicia Del Mastro for their continued work with supporting our teachers through their technology integration skills. They've been doing a tremendous amount of work since school started over the summer. But again, as we prepare to make the shift for all of our teachers at the elementary level to Google Meet, many of them are very accustomed to it now, so it's really not. They become very skilled in using that, but Alicia and John just still continue to go around and to coach and to help and to support our teachers so that they can help to feel comfortable in that environment. And we're looking forward to making that shift for everyone by November 9th. So we'll be monitoring that. Also, I wanted to follow up from last time, as we talked about, we did put out a survey to parents of students who had been accessing a full virtual experience. To see what their interest level is in shifting to a dedicated virtual teacher. So it's kind of interesting. We actually did not get that large of a response. We had about 20 parents interested in shifting their child to a full dedicated virtual teacher. And that, of course, spans grades K through 5. So we're going to be talking, we really foresee, potential to kind of go a couple different directions. We could have some teachers, we could have a teacher dedicated to all 6 grades, that's a pretty big job to ask anyone to do. We could divide it into 2 teachers doing potentially like a K2 group and a 3-5 group. What we realized, though, is that as we spoke last time, I think, we talked about how there's students may not feel like their needs are all being met in the current environment because of some of the live stream. So we're working to see if that improves. There was concern that teachers, because of the different audiences, that the teachers have to work with students in person, students who are hybrid virtual for the days that they're virtual, plus the students who are full remote all the time. Presents kind of 3 different audiences to which they have to plan. By assigning those 20 students to full remote teachers does not really alleviate that pressure on the teachers, because most of them, I think in almost every case except one, would still have students who are full virtual. So we're not sure if it's going to genuinely meet those needs. So what we're going to explore over the next probably week or so is to look at, is there a different way to use those full virtual positions that could provide better support to meet the needs of the students who are full virtual, and another way of alleviating the stresses that we're trying to fix here. So, and of course, we would be reaching out to those parents who did indicate interest with further information before we make any change. So we'll bring that recommendation back to the board. And finally, I will add that we will be resurveying our elementary parents after a few weeks go by. Once we've made the shift to the Google Meet and seen how that's gone, we're planning to reach out, and we will do that more specifically to elementary as opposed to K-12 like we did last time. I had a great meeting with Thought Exchange recently, and they're showing us some new tools that we can use to drill down even further. So we're excited about that. And that will end my report for tonight.
Will that have been the 3rd survey?
Probably. Yeah, we surveyed about what model parents might prefer back in August, I think. And then we surveyed the most recent results that we looked at last meeting. So yeah, this would be our 3rd, especially elementary specific survey.
So every 5-6 weeks, basically?
Yeah, and
something
I
like
think a lot of districts are finding the need to do that just because of, we're all learning new things. And I may have said it before, so sorry if I repeat myself. I think we overplanned on a lot of logistics in the summer and realizing, okay, now that we're up and running, things are working better. So we're all still learning in the new environment. So I think surveying is the
I
best
agree.
way
I'm just
to get some
trying to
information.
amplify that.
Yes, absolutely. Great.
Thank you. 4.2 is Board of Education Committee reports. Have we had any committee meetings since we met last? I don't think so. Soon we'll be getting a lot of those. 4.3 is Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning. Dr. Champ has
Yes.
Dr. Garcia's.
I do. He's not able to be with us tonight, sends his regards. So just to share with the board tonight, New York State Education Department is doing a digital equity survey. It's digital equity data taken from the end of the 2019-20 school year. That data revealed that over 300,000 students across the state did not have a device, and over 200,000 did not have reliable internet. And costs remain the top barrier to accessing those items. We're very fortunate here that as a district, we've been providing for a number of years now 6 through 12 devices, and we were able to provide devices to all students who were in need of them through the spring and again through this fall. Continued thanks go to the civics for their efforts and generosity and filling in with internet service in particular. They've really been problem solvers for that and have continued to care for our families in need. We still, unfortunately, are waiting for our Chromebook deliveries. At the moment, they are estimated to be received sometime in December. We're keeping our fingers crossed, but again, the buildings were able to deploy devices that we had on site to any family who indicated a prioritized need for them. We're continuing our partnership with Pelham's Junior League to promote science in the early grades, especially for underrepresented gender and BIPOC students. Last spring, the Junior League led several virtual STEAM experiences for children. We're excited about the prospects for this year as well. It was really creative and fun to see what they had put together and to see our students working alongside the Junior League folks. Info will be sent out about this to parents very soon. The dates, if you just want to save the date, you can mark off November 14th from 10 to 12 and November 15th from 2 to 4 for that fall scavenger hunt. And finally, the K-5 team has been working on report cards They've been working to finalize and modify the elementary report cards which in a way that will reflect the challenges and the current conditions of the hybrid learning environment. Last February, you may remember, we were on track to introduce an updated standards-based report card reflective of the new learning standards. This year, we're going to take an interim step in that direction, given that things are not quite going at the state level the way that we had anticipated at that point in time. And we're hoping to begin and incorporate the new report card, the new standards-based report card in the 21-22 school year. So we'll take a step in that direction this year based on our hybrid learning environment right now, with a full step in that direction by next year. And that's it from Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. Item 4.4 is Assistant Superintendent's update on the whole child. Ms. Chung.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Champ. That was very, thank you for your kind words, but it really, it takes, I think, all of us to try to keep our schools open, and certainly, what I'm doing is I'm working with the principals and the nurses, and I don't think they get enough thanks. So, I certainly want to thank the principals and the assistant principals and nurses, because every day we're on the phone together trying to figure out, what needs to happen. Along those lines, I know that when we have positive cases and if it impacts the schools, then we send out communication. I do want to point out that I know that every principal is reporting the number of positives at the end of the day, and that goes up to the state, and that is public knowledge. Sometimes parents may see a number, and we may not have sent out communication, and I do want to clarify why that happens. So sometimes when we have someone who's already under quarantine because their family member might have tested positive, and if that person's already been in quarantine and has not been in our schools and has tested positive and they let us know, then there is really no contact tracing. The person has not been here, so the number that's reported to the state may be different than us communicating with the school community. So I just wanted to mention that because there were a couple of questions that came up to the principals. So I wanted to kind of clear that up. Let's see. I've been working with, we have a behavioral consultant that we've been working with, and I know that learning from home is still difficult. It is challenging. Families are having a difficult time. Students are having a difficult time. And so we actually set up a workshop for next Thursday at 5:30 and 6:30. 5:30, it will be for elementary parents, K-5, and 6:30 will be 6 through 12. We have a team of behavioral specialists who will be really talking about how to, different strategies on how to support students and motivate their students at home, and possibly some tips on like how to set up the house and things like that. So I think that'll be helpful for families. That's going to probably, the communication and the Google Meet information will probably go out tomorrow. So I hope parents will take advantage and join us next Thursday night. And that's open to any parent, because whether you have a disability or you don't, these are very challenging times for everybody. So this will help any student. And that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4.5 is Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities. Mr. Ricky.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. Generally for business, it's somewhat of a light agenda. I wasn't sure, so I looked at last year's agenda for this month, and this meeting was about the same. So I guess this is, if there's a time when there's a little bit of a lull, this is when we're finding it. This evening at tonight's meeting, we're just asking you to approve some budget transfers. Some of it has to do with staff and their reclassification for their locations for where they're working budgetarily. We also takes into account contract settlements that happened after the budget was passed, and summer PD, which was related to COVID, additional training for COVID, and our additional unemployment expenses, which we've been experiencing, again, as a direct result of the COVID-19. There are 2 change orders that are being brought to the board for notification. Again, change orders up to $25,000 can be approved by myself, and up to $50,000 approved by the superintendent, with the provision that those change orders are then brought to the board at the next board meeting for notification. And the reason is so that we can keep work moving on the project. In this instance, this project is, one project is at the Pelham Memorial High School. It was a credit, so that's always nice, a $5,000 credit for work that was done or not done, not needed. And that was paperwork that just followed this week. And then there was another change order notification for Hutchinson Elementary School for additional ductwork, $8,000 for the electrical work. And we're expected to receive a similar one, about the same amount you should see at the next meeting from the HVAC contractor. And the backup is provided for the board. Also in this evening's meeting, personnel-wise, reluctantly, there's a resignation for the purpose of retirement that will be brought forward to the board for Mr. Ralph DeMasi, our security director for the last 14 years. Certainly, and I say reluctantly because I think the district is in a much better place from the work of Mr. DeMasi over all these years. And although we're just accepting his resignation, it would be a resignation for the purposes of retirement on December 31st. Certainly at a time closer to then, I think it'd be appropriate to recognize him for his contributions to the district and the safety and well-being for all our students and staff over the last 14 years. Certainly, again, if you spend any time in this building, you'll see the commitment to safety in the district. And Mr. DeMasi's touch is certainly on that, and we owe him a certain gratitude for that over the years. The internal auditor, as part of our internal audit plan, has been working on the information technology audit as well as our benefits administration audit. As they complete that work, we expect to bring it forward to the audit committee for the draft findings and then finally to the full board. So hopefully we'll see that in the next month to six weeks. But again, that work has been done. We're working with the auditor. There's questions, and as we work through that process, we try to provide all the information that's being requested and answer any questions. Also, with we're working to plan a facilities committee meeting in the next week or so, now that our committees have been established district-wide, so we're looking forward to doing that and getting all of our other committees moving forward with community members. So really, community members have been very generous in offering their time, and we want to make sure we reach out to them and, again, start those meetings shortly. Last week, we were very fortunate. We were able to have our bond sale for a 2018 capital project, the $57 million project approved by the voters. This evening, what we've done is we've asked Rick Gansey and Anthony Nash from Capital Markets Advisors to come and provide a summary of what our bond sale, the results of that bond sale. And if you remember, we had Mr. Gansey come before the board, some members of this board still here during the bond feasibility process, to kind of share with the community and with the board what the potential financial impact would be for the bond. And not only did we do that when the bond was originally, before the bond question was put before the voters, then we also asked Mr. Gansey to come forward and kind of give us a refresh on that most recently this spring. And that information, I think we all can agree, was very helpful in providing some clarity for the board members as well as for community members. Last week, we went out for our bond. We had a very successful bond sale, so I'm giving away the secrets a little bit, Rick. But what I'd like to do is Mr. Gansey has about a 7-deck slide just to kind of provide a summary. He's going to throw it up on the board there. If you have him on your computer, if you have questions, he'll be able to hear you. And then I've also printed out copies of that overhead, and I'll pass them around while Mr. Gansey starts. All right, Rick.
Is it up on the screen, Jim?
We're good. It's not on the screen now.
Let's see here. No. How about now? It's up there now? Okay, thanks. So thanks again. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Thanks again for having us to present once again to your board. We think it's always important, obviously, to give the board an update along the way, just as we've done, over the years since prior to the capital project vote. You'll recall that we were there, I was at your meeting on April 22nd to sort of set the framework for where we would end up with the bond financing sequence um, in resulting in the ultimate, final bond issue for the transaction for the capital project vote. So we thought today it might be helpful to give sort of a wrap-up summary of sort of where we were originally when the project was voted on, where we ended up throughout the process of the development of the capital project, and where we ultimately ended up once the bonds were sold about a month ago back in October. So what I'll do is I'll just talk briefly about the municipal bond market update, where we were since 2018 when the capital project was voted on, as well as where we are in the municipal bond market as of the day of the bond sale. And then Anthony from my office will go through in some detail the results of both the large $57 million bond issue, as well as the refunding bond issue that was approved by your board to refund the district's prior bond issues for debt service savings. So with that, I'll go through the MMD, so the municipal market data. You're familiar with sort of the updates we've given over the years with respect to the municipal bond market. You'll recall at our April meeting, there was a time, volatility in March during the COVID epidemic, and rates then began to slowly decline through April. What I wanted to do here is to show the board, how fortunate really we were in the sense that we couldn't have timed this any better by way of the financing sequence that we have developed with Jim and his team. And fortunately enough that we caught a bond market that was near the historical lows. So the top bar you'll see, or the line you'll see here, is May 15th of 2018, which is the date of the capital project vote. And then you'll see in the bottom part is the bond market on the day we sold the bonds in October of 2020. So you'll note that interest rates have significantly declined since the time of the district vote until the current market, anywhere from 150 to 200 basis points in certain parts of the yield curve. So that really played a big factor in the success of the program, in the sense that we caught, a bond market at very, very tremendous rates. So what we'll do is the next two slides, I'll have Anthony kind of talk about the results, who the bidders were on the transactions, and get into a little bit of detail on some investment funds that actually were the end purchasers of your transaction. So you get a flavor for, which investment funds, on Wall Street are currently holding your debt and participated in the transaction.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, so as Rick said, we really sold these bonds at really the best possible time in the past couple of years. As you can see on this slide, this was the results of the large issue for the capital project, the 57 million, kind of ultimate end financing, and these are sorted by TIC, which represents the true interest cost, and the low bidder came from Wells Fargo Bank. This being a 30-year financing, and the district managed to sell just under 2%. You can see those bids, but for the last one, we're all very close to one another, within a basis point or two. It was very competitive. There was a lot of appetite for your debt, not only from these underwriting firms, but also from, the primary investment firms on the street that actually bought it from these investment banks. So, I reached out to Wells Fargo and asked them to give me a little bit of color on who, their primary buyers were. So, most of the big funds that, you may or may not know, BlackRock, Goldman Sachs Asset Management, Nuveen, Neuberger Berman, Credit Suisse Asset Management, First Republic Asset Management, which is a pretty broad swath of the large institutional funds out there. There's also a number of counterparties that there's privacy issues they don't get into, but they said there was several additional nationally recognized firms that purchased in the secondary as well. But I mean, I think the takeaways are 7 bids is fantastic support for a transaction like this. Very tight competitive bidding, and the fact that we sold, a 30-year loan for under 2%. It was just fantastic. If we go to the next slide, Rick, we also at the same time, and I guess I'll just, one other thing, obviously the district's rated AAA. We had a rating call with Standard & Poor's leading up to this financing. And I think on the heels of the strong results that the district had in its 2020 fiscal year and the audit that you guys put out recently, the district was able to maintain that AAA, based on your solid reserves and the strong financial condition, management, all the positives that the district has. And that, of course, led to us being able to achieve, such positive results. On the refunding, significantly smaller, only $2.5 million. This was actually approved. This was a refunding of the district's 2010 bonds. The board approved this a number of years ago. You approved both the refunding of the 2009 bonds and the 2010 bonds. In 2017, we refunded the 2009s. And we just refunded these, obviously, as we mentioned last week. Again, you'll see this was only a 6-year deal, but it was a rate of under 0.4%. So, just an incredibly low rate. You can't even, you borrow 1-year money for about that rate. So, and then, borrowing at this rate enabled us to actually save even more money than we projected. It's a relatively small deal. You typically look to save, if it saves around 3% of what you're refunding, that's kind of the threshold that we look for to see if a deal is attractive. That's the threshold that the state controller looks for. And we ended up saving around $150,000, which is about 5.5%. So on a deal of this size, that was just a very good result.
Before I moved on to the last 2 slides regarding the comparison of the capital project over the years, did anybody have any questions on the bid results or the result of the bond issue? With that, I'll move on to the summary page, which each of the board members obviously is familiar with the format that we've used over the years. This is sort of the final look at what it looks like from a local share perspective. So we all know we have the current local share, and then we layer in the debt service and local share for the $57 million project. And where we end up with post bond issue, which incorporates the 30-year money for the project at less than 2%, as well as the impact of the savings on the refunding bond, to end up with a local share for the entire project at approximately $58 million, and a pro forma local share, which includes the existing local share of about $87 million. Now you'll ask, how does that compare to sort of where we were in the past? So this gives sort of a final snapshot of the progression of the local share that we've seen over the years, that your board and Jim's staff and our team have worked diligently over the years to make sure that what was promised to the taxpayers comes in, at or better than what was being projected. So you'll recall in March 26th of 2018, a presentation was put forth to the voters and posted on your district's website that showed a local share estimate of approximately $70 million. Fast forward to our meeting on April 22nd, where we gave an interest rate projection with a cushion of approximately 100 basis points or 1%. The local share at that time was about $60.2 million. When we finally sold the bonds, as Anthony points out, back in October, with the bond rate, less than 2%, the addition of the, savings and the refunding, the final local share for the project is $58.5 million, which is a significant decline of about $11.9 million, lower than what we had projected to the voters back in 2018. This equates to approximately $400,000 a year less in the final result than at what was as projected by the district to the taxpayers back in 2018. On a tax basis, I believe Jim maybe circulated to the board members a summary sheet, but that equates to probably a negative 0.59% property tax savings, quote unquote, versus what was actually projected to the voters back in 18. So overall, we think a tremendous result, and kudos to your board, who was involved obviously early on to structure this project, and Jim and his team to make sure that the execution of this project, got to the result to where we are today. Certainly, we're fortunate to have great interest rates, but I must say that the execution, the well thought out plan by the board, especially early on, and designing the project and what the right project was, certainly a very many iterations over the years on what the right project was, and I think we ended up in the right result. You've received a tremendous project, which is certainly, looking at the pictures online, it looks like the Hutch building is coming along really quite nicely. So kudos to the board and to Jim and his team to end up with the result that we are presenting today. So with that, we'll open up to any questions that anybody might have on the presentation. Happy to discuss any other items you might want to discuss.
I have one question. The local share calculation is based on existing building aid. Is that correct?
So Rick, the question was that the local share is based on the existing building aid.
Correct.
Percentage, right.
35 or 36, whatever it is.
What was our percentage now, Rick? We're over 40, I think, right?
44%.
Thank you. The interest rate, the state just released their interest rate last week. Our first draft, the local share was a little bit better. The interest rate was lower that the state put out for the average interest rate. So that's why we adjusted it a little bit. But if you think about it, it's a $57 million project, and the district local share is $58 million over a 30-year time period. So it's nice results.
It's free.
You could look at it almost like an interest-free loan.
AAA rated, and we're very proud of that. We're one of the few school districts in New York State that have the AAA. Could we quantify what savings we attain if we had a AA versus a AAA? Because we're obviously very proud of that fact. I mean, back of the envelope type of thing. How much of a savings do you think we capture because of that increased rating?
Rick, I don't know if you heard that or not. The question is, what are savings, anticipated savings from having a AAA rating versus a AA, if we had a AA rating?
Mm-hmm. AAA versus AA, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Anthony, did you run the numbers on that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, based on how this deal was structured, if you were a double A in the market on that day, it's probably translates to around $1.5 million, probably 1.5 million in interest expense, additional debt service on the loan.
I would agree. I figured it was somewhere in that neighborhood.
Thank you.
I was impressed, I am in the muni market myself, and I was impressed by the number of bidders that we had, and where they were all clustered together. I mean, I was actually surprised Wells Fargo was the winner, to be honest with you. I had another firm in mind that wasn't even on the list.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question, is that this was a very competitive offering. So is that normal to what you're seeing in the market now, or did we just get lucky?
So, Rick and Anthony, the questions and the comments are, can you talk a little bit about the activity that you've seen the last week or so? I know we kind of talked a little bit about that. And Wells is generally not someone who's known to buy this paper, but certainly the activity and kind of the response to this offering.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the last couple of weeks in the municipal bond market have been the two heaviest volume weeks of the year. And there's really been a tremendous rush to the market for issuers, not only in New York State, but around the country. I think there's a lot of concern about getting into the market, prior to the election, which has led to a lot of volume. And so, one of the things that, brought more buyers into your deal, maybe more bidders that wouldn't typically show up and buy these things, is that, and I kind of spoke to it and kind of rattling off some of those institutional funds that they end up selling through to, is, because these bonds were, so, had so much demand for them from the institutional funds. The firms that you saw on that list and the bid results, they're kind of a conduit. They're underwriting, and to the extent that they already have buyers lined up, those buyers that I listed, they're really, underwriting the notes initially to you, and then selling them right over to those institutional funds. A weaker credit, maybe a lower rated credit that doesn't have as much demand. Maybe you don't see a Wells Fargo show up because they're probably not as interested in underwriting, and then maybe holding that in their inventory and having to sell it over a matter of weeks or months. Taking the risk of carrying those bonds, but most of these bonds, I think, were gone the same day that they underwrote them, which was why there was quite a bit of interest and a number of firms bidding on the bonds that day.
Thank you. And again, for the board, for some of the rationale for the timing of a November bond sale, structurally, that worked out better for the district. It's a time of the year, if we have a larger bond payment. Some municipalities and school districts sometimes have to borrow money, tax anticipation notes or revenue anticipation notes, to make payments. This is a time of year when we find ourselves in a stronger cash position historically, because that's when we receive our tax receipts from property taxes. So again, working with CMA and talking this through, that's really how we landed in this time period too. And again, just strategically trying to make sure we found ourselves in a strong cash position when we needed to make those payments.
Good point.
I think we're good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rick and Anthony. Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
We love good news.
Rod?
I do have to say to the board that I think Jim deserves a lot of credit. I know that you put a lot of time and effort into this. You understand the process, and kudos to you. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Bond market really played along nicely.
That's okay.
And,
Sometimes you get lucky.
and certainly the folks in our business office, and really everybody with the AAA rating and the bond calls, and Jackie Beal, certainly you know Jackie, our treasurer. A lot of work, a lot of communication, a lot of follow-up, and it's that diligence, the teamwork that made it work. So thank you, and I'll certainly pass those words on to everyone there.
Thanks so much. So this brings us to section 5, which is financial reports and motions. I'd like to take a consent of items 5.1 through 5.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thanks, Leah and John. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 6 is policy monitoring and governance. 6.1 is our policy, the naming of school facilities. This is our second reading.
Okay, so in the last meeting, we looked at this policy and talked about some things we would add and change. So the policy that's attached on the agenda, which I'm sorry didn't make it into the update, has what I reflected as those changes. So I'm just going to read through it quickly and point out what I included, and we can make any changes that you see we need to make. Okay, so the subject is naming school facilities. The Board of Education may exercise discretion in selecting the name for a school building or facility, or in the renaming of a facility. In choosing a name for a new school or other facility, the board should be guided by considerations of good taste, concern for public relations, and a sense of historical appropriateness. Some issues that may be considered in a naming decision include local or national importance of historical figures, district geography, community contribution, former school officials or staff, importance of a particular individual in the planning or construction of the facility, and any potential promotion or appearance of promotion of local businesses. The board may permit the erection or placing of an appropriate plaque or memorial at the facility. So that's the first bit that we talked about with adding those things to the list. Then the board may solicit input from the staff, students, parents, and the community in connection with its decision. Community members, staff, students, and parents may submit a formal nomination in writing to the board, guidelines for which can be found below. From the time a nomination is put forward to the board, there shall be a waiting period of at least 18 months before a decision is rendered. When the nomination is submitted, it will be read during the next available public board meeting. During the subsequent 18 months, the nomination will be placed on a regular board meeting agenda no less than 2 times, approximately 6 months from the announcement and again 6 months hence. The public will be notified in the usual meeting notice that this topic will be on the agenda and will be welcome to speak about it during the public comment period. In particular, the contact person indicated in the nomination will be personally advised of the agenda item in advance of the meeting. Multiple nominations may be submitted for the same facility by different groups. The board will discuss the nomination in public session. In the event that a nomination is denied, the board will not entertain that specific renaming again unless something about the nomination or the environment has changed. There must be 6 months between the denial of the initial nomination and a new nomination accepted. The Board of Education may also elect to have certain facilities, fields, or buildings remain unnamed. And then I had some guidelines about the letter, what to include in the letter for a nomination. So that was pretty much what we talked about. I can read through that quickly. In the letter would include the name of the individual or the organization nominating the facility name, the name, email, and telephone number of a single person who will serve as the main point of contact regarding the nomination. This contact information will be used to alert the individual or organization that the nomination will be on a board meeting agenda, as well as to pose any questions regarding the nomination during the 18-month waiting period. A description of the person, event, etc. being nominated for the new name and justification for why the board should consider this name. Multiple names may be included in a given nomination. There is no benefit to submitting many nominations, but if there are different groups with different motivations for the naming or who wish to be represented individually, they may either collaborate or submit nominations separately. If this nomination has been previously denied, please include your rationale for what has materially changed in the intervening time period. So I think that covers it, although as I was reading it, I remembered that John brought up the question of can board members be included in a nomination, as part of a nomination? And I didn't address that.
Meaning that if we wanted to propose the
Right.
naming, that
Oh,
we'd
right,
be
yes.
held
Right.
to the same
It's the same
18-month
process.
process.
I don't think we talk about not having that be the case, but I can state that more explicitly if you feel like that's important.
I'm not saying it's particularly important, I was thinking out loud about,
Right,
does a process different if the board wants to make
Yeah.
a nomination?
I don't think it does, and.
Yeah, I don't think it does either.
Yeah, and this doesn't indicate that it would, so
Yeah.
I think it's fine, but.
So I just have one question, and maybe it's just the way I'm reading it. So if there's an 18-month waiting period and a minimum of 2 meetings, then on the 3rd meeting, the board is voting?
Right,
Okay. So 2 meetings prior to the final vote?
so it would be 6 months prior to the final vote. So it would be the initial nomination, 6 months later, which is 6 months in, 6 months after that, which is 12 months in, and then.
Final meeting for vote?
Right.
Okay.
You can meet more, but no less than that,
Right, no, I understand,
Yeah.
so it's a minimum.
right.
I think it's just important to note that we're not using the word vote in this. We're discussing it. I don't think
And
we've
we're making a decision.
put
right.
that language in, that's all.
That's true.
No, I'm not suggesting it, but the
Okay,
board
just
has
because
to-
you were saying it, I didn't know if you were meaning we should add in a formal vote. Like, I don't think that we discussed that before. And I
think
don't,
that- But that's what we do, right? We
no,
have to
I
vote on
don't think,
this?
You would have to pass a resolution to rename a facility, so that there would be a vote on a resolution at the end.
So maybe that needs to
Maybe
be
that
included.
should
Maybe
be
that should go
included.
in then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
it
just
should be
wondering-
clear how the decision is rendered.
right. So that would happen, that would be in public session.
Yes.
Yeah,
That'd be-
that would be in the 18th month,
Right.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
it'll be,
at
yeah.
month 18.
So I think the clarification is that the board makes a decision whether or not to put forward the motion,
To,
Right.
whether or not to,
to put it forward as a
Right.
motion.
As a
yes,
resolution.
as a resolution.
As a resolution.
Right.
And then if it's put forward as a resolution, then it's voted on.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I will add that
Yeah,
in.
perfect.
This is the second reading for this, so I'll add it in for the 3rd reading, and then we can go forward, unless there are other changes as well.
That's a
We don't
good
have to
point.
wait 18 months for this, right?
Yeah, sadly, no.
This isn't a big thing, but in the line that reads, "The board may permit the erection or placing of an appropriate plaque or memorial at the facility," and then the line that stands alone, "The Board of Education may also elect to have certain facilities, fields, or buildings remain unnamed." I wondered if those go together at the end?
Maybe just put the first hanger outer with the.
Yeah.
Okay,
It kind of looks odd
Yeah,
there, but
it's
also I
funky.
feel like it's sort of, those are like related anecdotes or
yeah.
additional things to think about.
There's 2 references in here to multiple nominations. Do we have a concern that there's going to be like battling nominations for a field?
I don't know if there's battling, but I think that there may be a feeling that if there are a lot of nominations, it's more taken more seriously. I think people want to know how to be represented if they're not the main contact. You know what I mean? So, for instance, there's a group of 10 people who feel strongly, they don't all need to submit individual nominations.
I see what you're saying.
But
Okay,
if
I
there are
misunderstood
separate
that.
groups, if there's like, the Arts Center and the library feel strongly about a renaming and they have different motivations, by all means, state your case, because it's different, separately,
I
or
thought-
together, but don't feel like there's a benefit to having tons of nominations.
I thought you were referring to having different people nominated for the same,
Oh,
that's the
That
way I
could
read
happen
it.
too.
Yeah, that's the
But-
way I read it in the first page,
Really?
but then
You
in
could
the
have,
second
like-
page I read it, I interpreted it the way you're talking about it.
okay, then maybe I'll just clear that up a little bit in this part.
Let me look back to the page.
So there's a difference in between a nomination, a separate nomination, and a letter in support of somebody else's nomination, right? So you could write a letter in support of a nomination made by somebody.
I mean, sure, I
I
suppose.
mean, that's likely to happen, that
Yeah, well, it's this, it's.
your neighbor makes a nomination and then you write in support of that nomination. But
Is
it still
that
counts
public
as.
comment? Is that more of like you would come and say that in public comment? Do we read letters of support publicly?
They'd need to come to public comment likely
Yeah.
Yeah.
for it to be read into the public
If you
record.
wanted it to be public.
Yeah.
But if you didn't, if you just wanted to send a letter of support, sure, I mean, yeah, I guess there's no,
But this contemplates different nominations for the same person by different entities.
exactly.
Correct, but is that really different than somebody nominates a person and then another person
Right, so
supports
that
the
support. I get your
rights and
point.
support?
Yeah.
I get your point, yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can stop, I don't think we want to necessarily stop people from writing letters of support, nor really could we, but maybe they then find a way to get their name onto the nomination. I don't think there's anything more that we could do, but what do you suggest?
Just that we consider the letters of support.
Yeah, well, I think people will do that if they want to.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think it,
I mean, it sounds like people have a couple vehicles to show the support, right? They can write letters to the board, or they can come to the meeting sessions and discuss it publicly, right?
Right.
Or they can add their name to the nomination
Right.
itself.
Right, or they add their
And
name
that
to the
happens
nomination
as
list.
well, right?
Yeah.
Many people will sign on to one
Right.
letter.
Right,
I was just confused about the multiple nomination thing. I didn't understand what it was.
Excuse me, thank you.
Okay, any other points? Okay.
Thank you for your work on this. This is definitely a helpful roadmap that I feel,
This is a thankless task.
It is a little.
especially when you sit in, I know you've been on policy committee before, when you sit in on those meetings. So this then brings us to 6.2, which is policy 7330, searches and interrogations of students. This is the second reading.
Right, so nothing has changed here since the first reading for right now. The policy meeting hasn't met since the last board meeting, but we are meeting tomorrow, and we are intending to take another look at the language here based on the feedback that we got through the equity audit that talks about our use of language and it feeling that interrogations might be, in particular, very aggressive unnecessarily so. So we're going to look at that, and I'm hoping that there is either through NYU Metro or some other way that somebody could take a look and kind of make us feel like we're heading in the right direction
Yeah.
with language.
And
So
I-
for the third, oh, sorry.
Yeah, and
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, for this one, my initial thought was just even changing the word interrogation to questioning.
That's what jumped into my mind.
More
Yeah.
decriminalizes it just at its face, but we can absolutely have NYU review it as well as attorneys. I think this one's already been through the attorney. Yeah, this
It
one has
has,
been through the
yeah.
attorneys. We could have NYU take a look at it
Okay.
through the equity lens.
So there might be changes for the third reading, but for right now, there are not.
And given the timing of the first reading and the second reading before the next policy committee, is it possible that we might need another reading?
Well, I think what would happen is we would hold off on the third reading.
Okay.
If we weren't ready to bring the
Okay.
changes, we could wait.
Great. Because
There
I
are
think
no
this one
fourth readings.
deserves the time that it needs.
Right.
Yeah, it might make sense to wait to bring it to us.
Right, depending on what
At a
the,
later date.
we'll see how that conversation goes.
Yep.
But yeah, no fourth readings.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Section 7 is superintendent's personnel recommendations. I'd like to take a consent of 7.1 through 7.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Benny. Any questions or comments? Jim, anything to add?
Just if we could ask you to not approve number 4, the retirement of Ralph DeMasi. But
It's going to be sad.
I don't know if that's really in your purview, but certainly,
We
you know, again,
begrudgingly will support his
we'll have a chance for
his retirement.
everyone
Yeah.
to say thank you to Ralph.
I want
and,
to reiterate the thanks for all that he's done for us, and I know that we'll have another time to recognize him more formally, so.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be nice.
And
Dr. Champ has
yeah,
another.
I would add, since people don't do well sticking to retirement here, Susan Gilbert, you will see the extension of her contract to finish out the year as the interim principal for Colonial School. We're appreciative she's agreed to stay with us through the year, and I think given the uncertainties of this year that are still in front of us, very appreciative of her steady hand. So we are asking you to approve an extension of that contract tonight, and we'll certainly begin the search process. We're anticipating sometime around February that we would begin the search process for a probationary replacement. And I did want to highlight one other item of note on the non-instructional schedule. I am recommending tonight Pauline Davies to be appointed as the new district clerk and secretary of the chief school officer, which is me. Pauline comes to us from Irvington School District. She's their current district clerk, so is coming to us with experience, having run votes, having done the minutes and working with the board there. So very excited to have her coming to us. We anticipate her beginning her work in the district on November 19th.
I noticed from her resume that she's a curler.
Yes.
She is, yes,
That
she
is
is
so
a
cool.
competitive curler.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
That caught everyone's eyes.
Absolutely.
Very unique. She's very something
She's
fascinating.
competed
about
at the national level for curling.
I
so
saw that, yes. I was
Pretty
impressed.
impressive.
To watch.
Yeah.
I will save the joke about sweeping things under the rug
Oh.
that somebody's already made.
Sweeping things under the rock, under the stone.
Wah, wah. Okay. No, I'm excited for you guys to get the chance to meet her. She seems wonderful. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 8 is People Personnel Services. We have Schedule D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Benny. Do I have
Second.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 9 is new business. Did you say you had something?
Yeah, I did have one item I wanted to raise. As you're probably aware, we're heading into parent-teacher conference time of year. And if you remember back in, I think it was August when we made the final calendar edits, we did eliminate the 2 full-day release days for parent-teacher conferences that we'd had in the past so that we could have 4 full superintendent's conference days at the beginning of the year. As we've been working with the principals to craft schedules for parent-teacher conferences, we're realizing that we're a little bit short on the elementary side. The time is a little bit short for all, but elementary really is not able to find a way to have all parents come in and have the normal amount of time that they'd like with their teachers. So I was going to ask the board to consider on that Thursday, on Thursday the 3rd, is already a half-day release for secondary for 6 through 12. I was going to ask your consideration to approve an early release for elementary on that day as well. We do have an early release Wednesday the day before because of the normal Wednesdays with the hybrid schedule. We will be beginning conferences at 1 o'clock on the Wednesday. So we are going to be making use of that early release for conferences that afternoon, that evening. And we're requesting you to consider that Thursday as well for just a half-day release, again, to give us about 3 more hours, which should provide sufficient time for the elementaries. So I didn't bring that for action tonight since that was not something we'd had the opportunity to discuss, but I wanted to just bring that up as an item for your consideration.
And how would that work out for Cohort A and Cohort B that week? I know you're
Yeah, I
constantly
believe,
looking to make it even for the
yeah, I think both of those days are B days. The Wednesday is already a half-day B, so it would be abbreviating a B day.
And that would get evened out at some point later
At
in
some
the year.
point, yeah, I know numerically the days do work out. I don't know that we've sliced it down to hours or not. We could certainly look to make an adjustment further down the road if we feel that it creates an inequity. Alex and I can
behind so
review
far?
that.
Like, is either cohort behind in?
I'm going to turn to Alex on that because Alex worked a lot on that calendar. In the grand scheme of the year, it evens out.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of what the balance was first semester versus second, and if there was even a first quarter balance that you recall. Microphone, please. He does tech support, he's the interim clerk, and now he's also a speaker at the meeting.
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that cohort B is a little bit behind right now because of some Monday holidays that we had earlier in the year. Those do even out throughout the course of the year, but we can certainly look with the proposed change and see what we can do if
Yeah.
it's unbalanced.
And behind, you mean in school hours?
I mean, in
Correct,
school
yes.
days, right?
Yeah.
In school.
Yeah, they would be made up by second.
Right.
Right now,
Yeah.
B is a little bit behind from what Alex is saying, and A will, it'll shift in second semester.
Which is
but
weird because A is in school on Mondays. Why would?
a lot of, I think we use the Wednesdays to try to balance them out.
Right.
And I think
Oh, and so
we've
it's
got
only half.
Veterans
Yeah,
Day
yeah,
coming
yeah,
up,
right,
which is a
right.
Wednesday in and of itself. We've got Thanksgiving coming up, which impacts,
Right.
and we've got the,
It impacts
December
cohort B,
holidays.
actually. I looked,
Right.
right? Like,
yeah.
what is that Wednesday? That's just another early release before Thanksgiving, is it often is?
That's normally, we
yeah,
always do an early release the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So we do our staging drill on that day.
Right.
So the Thursday that is becoming half would be it would be a standard half-day schedule. So basically, you'd
12
repeat
o'clock Christmas,
Wednesday.
yeah. It would be, that Thursday would look a lot like the Wednesday.
Like Wednesday.
So, but yeah, we can definitely go through the calendar and make an adjustment late, sometime in the future, so people have enough advance warning to make the adjustment.
That makes sense. That would be my only concern, would be just making sure that
Yeah.
cohort B
Very, very fair.
got adjusted for.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
All
Anything?
right, if that's the case, I'll bring that to the board at our next meeting for approval of a revised calendar.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
And those conferences are going to be done virtually, right?
Virtually. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, information should be coming out in the near future for
Very good.
signups.
Okay, so section 10 is communications and comments from the public. We have our Pelham examiner, public folks, but I don't think they're here for public comment.
It's nice to have some public for a change.
It's good to see you guys again. So section 11 is Eileen's adjournment of the
Oh.
meeting.
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Benny. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.